everyone, welcome to another edition of Johnny Vlogs. And before we get started today, I have to thank each and every one of you. Over 13,000 subscribers now. Just blows my mind. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. I really appreciate you being here. And I have some other people to thank before we get today's episode started. Today's episode of Johnny Vlogs is brought to you by new Patreon supporter Steve Kolinsinski. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it. Rayfin, another new Patreon supporter. Thanks for joining the club, Rayfin. Drowse Lequang. I hope I'm saying that right. It might be Li Qiang. But thank you so much for being part of supporting all of my efforts. I really, really appreciate that. And one more for John S. I think I know who that is. And if that's the John S. I'm thinking of, we did a little memorial piece for Elisa Lam together called Lost, written by Elisa Lam. So you might want to check that out, search for it on the channel. I think you'll probably enjoy it. So today, what are we talking about today? Well, I have to thank another supporter of the show. Her name is Lisa T. Lisa, she really does some very cool things in terms of research. As a matter of fact, once we get the podcast started, that's right, I got my mic, I have a story in particular that was written up by Lisa, and I love how she puts things together. So she sent me some research and this write-up on time slips. And it's strange because I really hadn't considered what a time slip is. I never really even heard of that before, but just to start, according to Wikipedia, a time slip is a plot device used in fantasy and science fiction in which a person or group of people seem to travel through time by unknown means for let me say that right, by unknown means for a period of time. And it's been used a lot, and especially if you're a fan of Star Trek or 80s comedies, I think you've seen quite a bit of time slips. But there's another meaning for it as well, where people are claiming that in reality they have gone through time slips. Lisa sent me a very interesting link to a blog spot. It's called timeslipaccounts.blogspot.com, and it's pretty much different accounts of people that have experienced this in real life, according to them and this blog. So here's a real short one I just want to read to you guys. This is from Jack from Wellington. There was one incident that I recall that happened to a friend of a very close friend of mine. Uh-oh. Sounds like an urban myth, right? Friend of a friend. But let's go ahead and roll with it, which resembles the parallel universe story above. This lady and her stepdaughter were crossing a busy street with many lanes, and as they entered the final lane before reaching the other side, they realized they were going to be struck by a car. But instead of the car hitting them, they both wound up automatically on the other side of the road. Then they appeared to have, quote, hallucinated, seeing themselves as though the vehicle had struck them. She can even describe the interior of the ambulance that she was transported in and apparently later died in, even though she has never been in an ambulance before. Both experienced this. She says she wakes up every day unsure if she's living in a dream. Kind of interesting. For me personally, I haven't had anything quite like this happen. I did have one case when I was extremely young where I felt like I lost time, and it was kind of illogical in how it happened. I used to have a bedroom that faced the street, and my bed was up against a window. And I remember one day laying on my stomach and propping my head up and kind of looking out the window and seeing kids playing outside and things like that. And I do recall the feeling of becoming sleepy, like, my eyelids are kind of heavy, and I blinked kind of hard once, and then I went ahead and blinked a second time. But when I opened my eyes, it was the next morning. And it's kind of weird because based on the amount of light that I remember seeing outside, this happened in the late afternoon. And I don't think my parents would have let me sleep all through the night in an upright position with my head propped up with my two hands under it like that. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I never I never really tried to understand that occurrence any better. But it's weird because reading through some of these time slip stories, it brought that right back to me. It's like, hey, remember when that happened? Some of these seem to be more about people getting glimpses into alternate realities. Like they know something's going to happen and then they kind of change course and something else happens. I did have one other instance where something like that happened once again, when I was a kid. I was in elementary school. I can't remember specifically who the teacher was for this class, but I was kind of a noisy student. I got into trouble a little bit in elementary school. And I remember that I had my name on the board and I had, I think, 2 or 3 check marks after it already. And I remembered that something was going to happen in the class and I was going to get this impulse to say something. And I recall what happened. It's kind of juvenile, so I don't want to go over it with all of you guys, but I stopped that impulse from happening. And for some reason, it's almost like a feeling of deja vu. I saw it happen in my mind. I saw that I said what I wasn't supposed to say, and I saw that the teacher went and put another check mark, and that meant that I was going to get detention. And somehow I was able to stop that, and it didn't happen in actuality. There was something about that deja vu feeling that showed it to me in advance, and I was able to say, no, I don't want that to happen, so I changed my reality. That's a lot of what these cases go into. Now, I do think I should share with you guys that when I was very young, I was hit by a car. So there is a possibility that I had some kind of head trauma and maybe this stuff was hallucinated in some way or something like that. Frequently in these stories, you'll see that some people are kind of unsure about the potential for these being hallucinations because they do seem so real to these people. And I think there might be something to that. There is another story about a pilot. And I'm going to put the links that Lisa T had pulled together for this in the description box below. So almost like a mini brain scratch. If you guys want to dive into it a bit more, read some of these stories for yourself, the links are down below. I got to tell you, I really enjoyed reading through these today. I think you will too. But it's basically about a Royal Air Force pilot goes flying into a really bad weather condition. All of a sudden everything clears up. He sees a airstrip that he thinks is non-operational, but all of a sudden it looks like it's completely operational, and he's seeing yellow planes out there and crew workers wearing blue. It doesn't make a lot of sense to him because he thinks that place is shut down. All of a sudden he goes back into the clouds and returns to his proper time where that airstrip is indeed not in use. Fast forward, I think 4 years later, it is announced that airstrip is going to be brought back, and now they have yellow planes that are flying out of there, and there are workers that are wearing blue attending to those planes. So apparently he even wrote a book about it. So you can check the description box below, and if you really love it, I'd say go ahead and buy his book and check it out. But it just kind of got me going, and I love hearing stories from you guys. So look into this time slip thing a little bit and let me know if you have heard of a friend of a friend. But even more so, if you guys have personally had stories about either time slipping, lost time, or deja vu that seems to show you almost like a parallel universe or a different outcome to the realities that you experience. I would really love to hear about that. Drop it in the comments below and I'll be sure to check it out. Really interesting brain tease. Thank you once again to Lisa for pushing this in my direction. I really enjoyed reading through this stuff today. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of Johnny Vlogs. I will catch you on the next show on the Geek and Dorks channel, and I hope you are having a great day. Take care.